The humans were in a goddamn murderous xenocidal rage, and Yaksa was freaking out. Timothy Warren, seasoned Astro veteran, pushed through the entrance of Zeta-9's frigid habitat dome, exoskeleton servos whining in the 250-degree temps. "You're 12 hours late, warboy," Yaksa greeted coldly, his scaly claw not offered for shaking. The outpost leader looked pissed off, reluctant. "I detest tolerating your kind's presence, but our accords force my claw. The sooner your inspection concludes, the sooner you can piss off back to that dirtball you call a home planet." Timothy snorted. "Earth's a pile of radioactive ash thanks to your species' orbital bombardment last century. Glad the ceasefire is holding, Yak, but that's not why I'm—" "Don't call me that, you filthy primate," Yaksa hissed, Krathny frills bristling. "Just keep to your quarters. We're dealing with some incidents. Outposts on lockdown until the situation stabilizes. Don't interfere." He motioned for Timothy to follow, stomping ahead. Emergency lights flickered as they passed twitchy Krathny troopers gripping phaser rifles. Scorch marks and ruptured conduits scarred the steel alloy walls. The Spartan private quarters sealed with a gaseous hiss as Yaksa departed. Timothy immediately popped open his encrypted mission file. Hundreds of human deep space colonists had vanished in Hazari space. The reports instantly quashed. Against EarthGov's orders, he was here to find out why. Humanity's survival hinged on those far-flung pioneers spreading mankind to the stars. If the Krathni were disappearing them. A blood-curdling scream and shattering glass echoed from the corridors. Flashing red klaxons blared. "Breach in Sector 7. All security teams. Aha-ga!" Plasma fire and inhuman shrieks of agony filtered through the bulkheads. "Shit!" Zipping up his tactical exosuit, Timothy snatched a phaser rifle from the locker and sprinted towards the chaos. Rounding the corner, he beheld a viscera-strewn abattoir of mutilated yellow Krathni corpses and smouldering craters. Neon-green blood ran in rivulets across the deck. A trail of glowing, viscous slime led deeper into the station's flickering innards. Yaksa's tinny voice screeched over the blood-spattered intercom. "Warren, don't you dare interfere. This doesn't concern humans." Timothy switched off the comm, his jaw set in grim determination. Flicking the phaser to max power, he plunged into Zeta-9's twisting corridors, hell-bent on uncovering the deadly truth lurking in its shadows. Timothy pressed onward, tracing the slime trail deeper into Zeta-9's flickering bowels. The pungent stench of chemicals and gore assaulted his nostrils. His heart pounded as he rounded a corner, phaser rifle at the ready. There, he discovered a sealed door that appeared to have been wrenched open from within, its metal edges warped and twisted like a crumpled candy wrapper. Stepping inside, his eyes widened at the sight of a hidden laboratory. Strange pulsating pods lined the walls, bubbling tanks filled with grotesque half-formed creatures suspended in glowing, viscous fluid. Shattered glass and broken equipment littered the floor, crunching under his boots. Timothy approached a still-functioning computer terminal, its screen casting an eerie green glow. He accessed the lab's encrypted logs, his hands shaking with a mixture of fear and anger as he read the horrifying truth. The Krathni had been secretly experimenting on captured humans, attempting to splice their DNA with Krathni genes to create a new breed of super-soldier. The experiments had gone catastrophically wrong, resulting in the creation of mentally unstable, flesh-hungry hybrids. Suddenly a clawed hand burst through a nearby tank, sending shards of glass flying. A snarling, misshapen creature, its body a twisted amalgamation of human and Krathni features, lunged at Timothy. He squeezed the trigger, blasting the abomination with a searing beam of plasma. It crumpled to the floor, twitching and oozing neon-green ichor. But the commotion attracted more of the creatures. They emerged from the shadows, their distorted faces contorted with insatiable hunger. Timothy fired his phaser in controlled bursts, dropping the monsters one by one. Yet for every one he killed, 2 more seemed to take its place. As he fought for his life against the relentless horde, a grim realization dawned on him. The Krathni's experiments must have been happening for years, and the missing human colonists were likely the unwilling test subjects. White-hot fury surged through his veins at the Krathni's callous disregard for human life. With his phaser running low on power and the creatures closing in, Timothy made a desperate break for the exit. He slammed his fist against the door controls, sealing the lab behind him as the hybrids threw themselves against the reinforced metal, their claws scraping and screeching. Timothy leaned against the wall, his chest heaving with exertion, and his mind reeling from the implications of his discovery. He knew he had to uncover the full extent of the Krathni's atrocities and find a way to stop these creatures before they could escape the outpost and threaten the galaxy at large. Timothy raced through the blood-splattered corridors, his heart pounding. He had to find Yaksa and get some goddamn answers. The command center was the logical place to look. As he approached the sealed blast doors, he heard the unmistakable clicks of Krathni pulse rifles being aimed at him. "Yaksa, open up! I know you're in there, you scaly bastard!" "Silence." Timothy gripped his phaser rifle tighter. "I'll give you to the count of 3 before I blast this door to molten slag. 1, 2... The doors hissed open, revealing a wide-eyed Yaksa surrounded by a contingent of heavily armed guards. "Get in here, quickly!" Yaksa hissed, motioning for Timothy to enter. Once inside, Timothy wasted no time. He slammed Yaksa against the wall, his forearm pressed against the Krathni's throat. "Start talking, now. What the hell is going on here? What are those things in your lab?" Yaksa squirmed, his frills flattening in submission. I don't know what you're talking about. What lab?" Timothy pressed harder, his face inches from Yaksa's. "Don't play dumb with me. I saw the experiments, the human test subjects, the hybrids. What have you done?" Yaksa's resolve crumbled. It wasn't my decision. The orders came from the highest levels of our government. They've been abducting humans for decades, trying to unlock the secrets of your biology." Timothy reeled back, his mind spinning. Why? Why would you do this?" Yaksa looked away, shame etched on his reptilian features. "Your kind, you evolved so quickly, rose to challenge us in what felt like the blink of an eye. Many among our leadership fear your potential. They thought that if we could harness your strength, your resilience, we could create an army of super soldiers to maintain our dominance." Timothy felt sick. The scope of the Krathni's betrayal was staggering. How many outposts like this are there? Dozens, maybe more, scattered throughout our territory, each one conducting its own experiments. The implications crashed down on Timothy like a ton of bricks. If the truth got out, it could shatter the fragile peace between their species, plunging the galaxy into total war. Suddenly, an ear-splitting alarm blared through the command center. Yaksa scrambled to the security monitors, his eyes widening in horror. "By the void, they're loose! The hybrids, they've broken containment!" On the flickering screens, Timothy watched as the twisted monstrosities tore through the outpost's defenders, their claws and fangs rending flesh and bone. Krathni pulse fire seemed to barely slow them down. Yaksa slammed his fist on the console. "We have to purge the outpost. Release the nerve gas. It's the only way to ensure those abominations don't escape." "Are you insane?" Timothy snarled. "There could still be humans alive in this hellhole, not to mention your own people." "Then what do you suggest we do, human? Wait for those things to slaughter us all?" Timothy's mind raced. He had to find a way to contain this nightmare, gather the evidence he needed, and somehow prevent an interstellar war. Timothy clenched his jaw, his eyes darting between Yaksa and the writhing horde of hybrids closing in. "Initiate the lockdown, now!" he barked, his voice raw with urgency. "Seal every exit, every vent. We can't let these things escape." Yaksa hesitated for a split second before slamming his clawed hand down on the control panel. With a resounding clang, blast doors slammed shut throughout the outpost, trapping the monstrosities within its labyrinthine corridors. "I need that prototype weapon you mentioned," Timothy demanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. Yaksa tossed him a sleek, angular rifle, its surface thrumming with barely contained energy. "Concentrated plasma bursts. It's our best chance against those abominations." Timothy nodded grimly, checking the weapon's charge. He had to move fast, find any survivors before it was too late. With a final glance at Yaksa, he plunged into the chaos, the rifle held tight against his shoulder. The corridors were a nightmare of flickering emergency lights and twisted shadows. Unearthly shrieks echoed off the walls as Timothy advanced, his boots squelching in puddles of viscous ichor. He rounded a corner and came face to face with a pack of hybrids, their misshapen bodies a grotesque fusion of human and Hazari features. Timothy squeezed the trigger, and a searing bolt of plasma leapt from the rifle's muzzle. It struck the lead creature in the chest, burning a fist-sized hole clean through its torso. The thing let out a gurgling wail and crumpled to the floor, its limbs spasming. The rest of the pack surged forward, their claws outstretched and fangs bared. Timothy fired again and again, each shot finding its mark with deadly precision. The air reeked of charred flesh and ozone as he pressed on, stepping over the smoking corpses of the fallen monstrosities. In the depths of the outpost, he stumbled upon a hidden detention block, its reinforced doors dented and scarred. Heart pounding, Timothy pried them open with a screech of tortured metal. Inside, a handful of human captives cowered in the shadows, their eyes wide with terror. Among them was a young woman, her face gaunt and haunted. You're human," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I'm Sarah, the Hazari. They did things to us. Terrible things." As Timothy freed them from their shackles, Sarah gripped his arm, her fingers digging into his flesh. "Listen, I overheard the scientists talking about a fail-safe, some kind of purge system for the whole outpost. It might be our only chance to contain this nightmare." Timothy's mind raced, weighing the implications. Activating the fail-safe would mean sacrificing any Hazari survivors, condemning them to a horrific death. But if he didn't, the creatures would escape, spreading their contagion like a plague across the galaxy. With a heavy heart, he made his decision. "Where's this fail-safe located?" he asked, his voice grim. Sarah pointed a trembling finger. "The central power core, deep in the heart of the outpost." Timothy nodded, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He had to get these survivors to safety, then end this madness once and for all. "Stay close," he ordered, checking the charge on his rifle. "And if one of those things gets too close, don't hesitate." Together they set off into the gloom, the screams of the damned echoing in their wake. The corridors twisted and turned, a labyrinth of horrors that seemed to stretch on forever. Around every corner, a new monstrosity awaited, each more grotesque and powerful than the last. Timothy fought like a man possessed, his plasma rifle spitting death with every shot. But even as he cut down the creatures, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly, unutterably wrong. Some of the hybrids, even as they lunged at him with murderous intent, seemed to be pleading with him, their voices a garbled mix of human and Hazari. "Kill me," one rasped, its mangled face a rictus of agony. "Please, end it." Timothy felt bile rise in his throat as he realized the terrible truth. These creatures, these abominations, they still retained shreds of their former consciousness, trapped in a waking nightmare of pain and madness. With a roar of anguish, he redoubled his efforts, carving a path through the horde with ruthless efficiency. At last, they reached the central power core, its massive reactor thrumming with barely contained energy. Sarah raced to the control panel, her fingers flying over the keys. I think I can activate the fail-safe from here," she called out, her voice trembling. "But once it's initiated, we'll only have a few minutes to reach the escape pods before the whole place goes critical." Timothy gritted his teeth, his grip tightening on the rifle. "Do it," he growled, taking up position by the entrance. "I'll hold them off as long as I can." Alarms blared, and warning lights flashed as Sarah input the final command. The countdown had begun, a timer of doom ticking away on the display. "It's done!" she yelled, sprinting back to Timothy's side. "We have to go now!" They ran like the hounds of hell were on their heels, the last of the creatures howling and gibbering behind them. The escape pods were just ahead, their hatches open and waiting, But as they neared their salvation, a figure stepped out from the shadows, blocking their path. It was Yaksa, his eyes wild and his scales slick with sweat. "You!" he hissed, his voice dripping with venom. "This is all your fault, human. You brought this destruction upon us." Timothy felt a surge of anger boiling up inside him. After everything he'd seen, everything he'd learned, Yaksa still had the gall to lay the blame at his feet. "Out of my way, Yaksa," he snarled, leveling his rifle at the Hazari's chest. "I won't ask twice." But Yaksa only laughed, a broken, unhinged sound that sent chills down Timothy's spine. "You think you can threaten me, meatbag? You think I fear death after the horrors I've witnessed? No, I welcome it, but not before I make you pay for what you've done." With a howl of rage, Yaksa lunged forward, his claws outstretched and his fangs bared. Timothy braced himself for the impact, knowing that the fate of the galaxy itself hung in the balance. With a howl of rage, Yaksa lunged forward, his claws outstretched and his fangs bared. Timothy braced himself for the impact, knowing that the fate of the galaxy itself hung in the balance. The two combatants clashed in a whirlwind of violence, Yaksa's maddened strength pitted against Timothy's skill and resolve. Claws raked against exosuit, sparks flying as they grappled. Around them, the outpost shuddered and groaned, the countdown to destruction echoing through the halls. Yaksa snarled, spittle flying from his jaws. "You think you've won, human? The Hazari will rise from the ashes of this place, stronger than ever. We will harness the power of the hybrids and conquer the stars." Timothy gritted his teeth, straining against Yaksa's grip. "You're insane," he grunted, twisting free and delivering a brutal punch to the Hazari's scaly visage. "Your twisted experiments end here." Yaksa staggered back, his eyes blazing with hatred. He charged again, his talons seeking Timothy's throat. "We will enslave your pathetic species and rule the galaxy." Timothy dodged and weaved, his mind racing. The depths of the Hazari's cruelty and ambition were staggering. He had to end this, here and now. With a surge of desperate strength, he caught Yaksa's arm and wrenched it behind his back, driving the Hazari to his knees. "It's over, Yaksa," Timothy growled, his voice raw with exhaustion and disgust. "Your abominations will die with this outpost, and the truth will come to light." Yaksa only laughed, a broken, gurgling sound. You understand nothing, human. This is only the beginning." Timothy brought his fist down in a final savage blow, and Yaksa crumpled to the floor unconscious. The countdown reached its final seconds, the outpost quaking as its reactor went critical. "Timothy!" Sarah screamed from the escape pod's hatch. "We have to go, now!" Leaving Yaksa's prone form behind, Timothy raced to the pod, leaping inside just as Sarah slammed the launch controls. The small craft blasted free of the disintegrating outpost, hurtling into the void of space. Behind them, Zeta 9 detonated in a blinding flash of light, a miniature supernova that consumed the abominations and the evidence of the Hazari's crimes. As they drifted among the stars, the adrenaline slowly fading, Timothy reached for the comm panel. "I have to report this," he said, his voice hollow. "The Galactic Council, the media, everyone needs to know what the Hazari have done." Sarah's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. "Wait," she whispered, her eyes haunted. "There's something you need to know first." Timothy frowned, searching her face. "What is it?" "Tyson, I found something in the lab's files. The experiments, the hybrids, and it wasn't just the Hazari. There were humans involved, too." "What?" Timothy recoiled as if struck. "That's impossible." Sarah shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "Rogue elements in both our governments working together, each side wanting to create the ultimate weapon to gain an advantage over the other." Timothy's mind reeled, the implications staggering. If this got out, if the public learned that humans were complicit in these atrocities, it would mean war, Sarah said, as if reading his thoughts. A conflict that would consume the galaxy. Billions would die. Timothy slumped back in his seat, his heart heavy. The rescue ship loomed on the view screen, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. But with it came an impossible choice. As the airlock cycled and the medics rushed to check them over, Timothy made his decision. Zeta 9 was destroyed in a containment breach, he reported, his voice leaden. The Hazari experiments, the hybrids, all gone. Sarah met his gaze, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The truth, as horrific as it was, would have to remain buried, for the sake of peace, for the future of both their species. As the rescue ship carried them away from the scorched remains of the outpost, Timothy stared out into the infinite expanse of space. The weight of his choice, of the secret he now carried, pressed down upon him like a physical thing. He thought of the horrors he had witnessed, of how close they had come to unleashing an unspeakable evil upon the unsuspecting galaxy, and he wondered, in the silence of his own mind, if the price of peace was too high. Sarah's words echoed in his thoughts, a grim prophecy of the future that awaited them, the cycle of mistrust and violence, the seeds of war sown in the shadows, all waiting for the right spark to ignite the flames of destruction. Timothy closed his eyes, the ghost of Yaxa's final mocking laughter ringing in his ears. The battle was won, but the war was just beginning. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.